but we will move on to our next topic, which will be a little bit more lighthearted, and that's about what makes a perfect DLC or expansion. So, DLCs, obviously downloadable content. Expansions are full game expansions that add to it. They do have their own different types. There's a there's a whole range of questions that we've got about it, but I guess we'll start off, Josh. I'll ask you the question. You've just played Elden Ring and you've played Shadow of the Erd Tree. Have you finished it yet?
Yes. No.
Yes, no.
No. I have finished up until the final boss.
Okay. So
I'm still.
so that's enough. That's enough to have that's enough to have a
100%.
conversation about it. Okay. So I'm going to assume that this topic is based around your thoughts behind Shadow of the Erd Tree and kind of where that sits. And we talk about some sort of expansions as ways that really magnify a game and help it along. So like you might talk about Tom Clancy's The Division, and then you got The Division Underground, which completely changed how you viewed The Division. So there's a whole range of different options. For yourself, what sort of expansions, besides, I guess, the obvious in Elden Ring, like expansions, DLCs, what do you think has really added to a game rather than, like they could be listed as their own release almost, but the fact that they've added to an already finished product just makes it that little bit more.
Yeah, I'm taking a different stance. I don't really like DLC most of the time. I think for me, once I finish a game, I like that sense of finality, and going back to a game 6 months, a year later, most of the time, I don't really want to do it unless I have a real drive for it. I even think of like Horizon, and then the Burning Shores DLC, which I haven't finished because it was like, okay, I'm over a year after playing Forbidden West. I've probably played, I don't know, 100, oh, not 100, but a lot of games in between that game, since finishing it. And I purchased it. I put it on. I'm like, oh, it's good to be back. And then immediately just got my ass kicked, and immediately was like, I have to relearn this game.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times I tend to not really want to play DLCs or expansions. My favorite types of expansions, though, are the ones where it's a completely separate kind of standalone experience.
Okay.
And like for me, the contrast to Burning Shores would be like Miles Morales was to Spider-Man, where I guess it's technically its own game, but it's kind of within the world. That's the stuff I like. That's
a separate experience, kind of like.
Yeah, like a separate experience, a budget title within the world of a game. It's an expansion of that world, but isn't kind of so tied to the main game, and doesn't kind of like Burning Shores picks up literally after the end of the main game, right? Like, some times past type thing.
Yeah.
I much prefer either standalone pieces of expansion DLC, or if you're going to do it, it needs to be special. And that kind of ties into Elden Ring, right? With Shadow of the Erd Tree. That's different. Like, that's a, generational style of game that people were itching to have more content. I just think most games don't, this is going to sound really snobbish of me, don't deserve the idea of like, why am I coming back? Why? I've done this. I'm content with it. Unless there's a real like narrative thread that's been left, which again can be a negative too. I often go back and think about Prince of Persia. I don't know if you ever played the PS3 Prince of Persia. That was kind of like no, it was like the cell shaded one with Nolan North voicing the prince.
No.
That ended with a cliffhanger that you can only get the ending if you played the DLC, right? That stuff I definitely don't like.
Yeah, nah.
But then there's like other positive examples is like the Lost Legacy expansion or DLC for Uncharted 4. Loved it.
Separate game.
Separate game, playing as Chloe, not Nate. Perfect. I'm in. I love the world. If I was a studio that had a game that we were planning to do expansions on, or if I was at Sony kind of guiding my first party teams, or Xbox, same thing, that's what I would be saying. It's hard to expect a player to return to a game story and character that they haven't touched in over a year. But it isn't too much of them to ask to come back to the world and just kind of enhance the story, advance the story, but not kind of demand kind of the skill set of just finishing the game. Like Burning Shores kicked my ass because I'm like, I don't even remember how to take down one of these things. Like it's been multiple games since then. Elden Ring had that, but even Elden Ring kind of really set itself apart and was its standalone thing. Like the whole leveling system in the DLC is completely independent to the main leveling system in the main game. And it's its own map, it's its own kind of thing. That's kind of a separation that it was enough for me, even if it wasn't, again, a generation style of game. So that's typically how I interact with most DLCs. My rule of thumb, most of the time, if it's a game I like, if the DLC or expansion's coming on its own disc, it's probably warranted enough for me to play it.
Okay.
How's that?
All right. So
You like that, don't you?
Well, because it ties into what I'm going to say, but you're going to hate what I say. So I had to think about this, about what my favorite DLC was and my favorite expansion was. And I'll start off with the expansion. So the expansion is on a separate disc. However, it's still part of the main game. You can't play it separately. It's not a standalone expansion. And so my favorite expansion was actually The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, The Shivering Isles, which is actually one that I've recently finished in the last couple of months, from the Xbox 360 version, by the way. I felt like that was, and it was an expansion of the world, because you had the Mad King, his own area. It was a completely different area with its own stuff. You had to get there through the main game, that sort of thing. But it still felt separate. Like you had to install the expansion like disc, and then like the portal would open up, and you had to do a particular quest, and then the portal opened, and you can jump in, and then you do your thing. That was like, I guess, the expansion that came to mind, the Shivering Isles, and the DLC that came to mind was actually from a game called BioShock Infinite. And that was the Burial at Sea, which same world, same save file, but it was different.
Same age, same
income, same super contribution. Yeah.
Sorry, that's an Australian deep cut.
Very much. So that was the Burial at Sea, episode 1 and episode 2, and yeah, there is a couple that I thought about. Like LA Noire had a couple of different ones, and
Undead Nightmare from Red Dead Redemption, Festival of Blood,
those
2.
Those were the two that stood out because, well, with BioShock Infinite, I actually really enjoyed BioShock Infinite. Out of the 3 BioShocks that had come, so 1 and 2 and Infinite, I played Infinite till finish first, and I think it's more because it was more a shooting 2D rather than like a kind of a semi-horror,
survival horror,
that sort of thing. Like, I don't know, it's just more of my vibe.
I get you.
But the Burial at Sea expansion just gave everything a different perspective. It's a different play style, and I really enjoyed that.
I was gonna say that is also key, having something to say, and that's why I kind of said the whole like,
Miles
who
Morales.
do you think you are to expect us to like want to go back into your world, right? Like,
yeah,
it needs to have something to say, and those DLCs said it. And kind of like even Undead Nightmare had its own like spin on the game, or even Left Behind with Last of Us, right? Like having something to say, or taking what we know and kind of flipping it on its head, that could be fun too. But if it's just more of the same, like perfect example, right? We used Miles Morales, but then there was also the Spider-Man DLC, which
Yeah.
was like those episodic with Hammerhead.
More of the same.
Could have completely just been an email. Like, did not need.
I've stopped. Like, I've literally got like Spider-Man, like the first Spider-Man. I've got the DLCs. I've got the full thing on PlayStation 5, and I got halfway through. I think it was the Black Cat like story, and I just got fucking bored. I was like, I've done all this again,
Yeah.
and now I'm
It's
gonna have
only
to do
important
it
for
with harder
Yuri.
enemies.
It's just important for Yuri's story, and it'll make sense when you play. If you play
No,
Spider-Man 2.
no, it's just good for trophies. That's all it is.
Yeah, I agree. But that's an example, right? Where it's just like, So that's how I interact with expansions and DLC. Any cosmetic, any like, get the golden gun. You're not getting a cent out of me for any game ever.
All right. So what about add-ons? All right. So I'm going to expand the topic a little bit. We've talked about DLCs and we've talked about expansions. What about add-ons? So, for example, Astrobot has an add-on that's every 4 weeks where, well, it's an add-on now. There's a different trophy that unlocks every 4 weeks where you've got to go to a particular level to do a little puzzle to basically get a trophy.
Oh, shit, was there trophies attached to that? I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's trophies. Yeah, the
you
third
son
one.
of a-
I told you this.
I didn't realize it was
told you
trophies.
this.
I thought maybe PlayStation Star kind of things, but all right.
I
maybe
told you
wasn't
this.
listening.
So like so there was one that was like on the 1st of August and the last one is on I think the 28th of August because Astrobot comes out on the 6th of September, so a week beforehand.
Yeah.
And so for each one, like you go to one of the levels and you've got to like do this puzzle that wasn't available beforehand. And basically you do this little puzzle, it takes about 3 minutes, not even, and then you get the trophy, boom. And that's made me keep Astrobot or Astro's Playroom installed on my PS5 because I know that there's going to be another one that every 4 weeks leading up to Astrobot that's going to get me to go back and play. But the thing is, I enjoyed that because there's no like steep learning curve. As you were talking about with Horizon, you've got to figure out how to grapple enemies and how to do everything. You've got to figure out
How to stealth,
you got to figure out the controls again. With Astrobot, it's jump or it's punch.
Yeah.
And maybe there's
Or
a
jump
glide
punch.
involved. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
That's all you have to worry about. And then it's just about using your brain. And I really appreciate those kinds of add-ons or DLC, whatever you want to call it, because you don't have to really press yourself to get back into it. So like a game like The Witcher 3, I'm already a little bit like, ooh, that's going to take 100 hours. And then you've got 2 expansions for it. And I'm like, oh, fuck. So that's another
Blood
20
and Wine's probably one of the best.
Yeah, exactly. You could talk about how good it is, but that tells me that if I want to finish the game and do the 2 expansions, that's 150 hours. And in my mind, I'm already like cowering in the corner, thinking like, "Holy crap! How am I going to finish 150 hours?"
Yeah, no, I get that. I don't really add-ons. Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. Like, not really. I don't know.
Updates. It's like a title update. Like,
It's kind of like when Spider-Man gets like new skins, right? It's like, oh, we've added the Spider-Man suit from.
Yeah. Yes and no. Like
Yeah.
because you got things like Sea of Thieves, like games like Sea of Thieves, which is I would say a game as a service. I think it's pretty much in that realm, and you've got your major updates. But
Yeah, like Helldivers has got that too,
but
right?
you've got your title updates during, and so a title update might be like so we're gonna unlock like this particular type of mission, and there's like 6 achievements attached to it where you got to go to these islands and pick up like X amount of like treasure chests or whatever. The same game mechanics, same difference, because it's a game as a service and it's something that you're already used to going back and playing. It's just a little bit extra. It's not like a single player game where you get to the end credits, you finish the story, you see the credits, and then 3 to 6 months later, they're like, oh, you want to come back? Like that, I think that's probably the hard part.
It's got it all of that DLC expansion, add-ons, whatever. It's all linked to what the game expects of the player. If it's a game where the player expects to be in every week and expects things to happen, yeah, 100%. Helldivers, same thing, right? You go in expecting that there's a new whatever.
Something. Yeah.
But I'm not like wanting to turn back on whatever game. even Astrobot, which is a game I love. I'm like, I'm just gonna wait until Astrobot comes. Like,
So you're not going to go
great
back to
get the
Astros.
trophies.
You're not going to go back to Astro's Playroom and play the
No,
add-on and
no,
get all 4.
no,
You can
no.
get it all in 10 minutes.
Yeah, I know. Maybe I will. Maybe because there is those trophies. And I've got
I'm
the
49
platinum,
out of 51. I'm ready to go. I've already got the platinum, but I'm ready to hit that other 2.
Yeah, but for nine out of 10 games, like I wouldn't be doing it. So yeah, like I think back on some of the DLC that I've really enjoyed over the years. Like even the Yuffie's DLC from Final Fantasy VII was great. Like I said, Lost Legacy.
Everyone talks about Phantom Liberty for Cyberpunk.
Phantom Liberty, again, having something to say. That kind of like was like the relaunch of
Cyberpunk.
Cyberpunk, and some people said like it's hard to actually go back, right? Like because it reinvents the stealth, reinvents the weapons,
It fixes the game.
It fixes the game, right? And that stuff I like. That I appreciate it, but it's again, then at that level, it just ties into people who enjoyed the game. You know what I mean? Like if your favorite game got, regardless of what it is, some sort of game-changing refinement in a form of paid DLC or an expansion, you would play it.
Okay.
It's when it's like, it's okay, we've added 10 more skins and there's a new sword and there's like a nice gun. I'm like, okay, whatever. Or there's like story content. I'm like, I don't really care about Hammerhead and what the hell's happening here.
So like, okay, let's turn it on a different angle then. What about games that have released, that have had, whether it's expansions or add-ons or something like that? Let's say a game like Sleeping Dogs, right? And then you've got the enhanced edition that comes out in the next generation that has everything included. You know, the Batman Arkham games.
Yeah.
Like LA Noire, the complete editions. So I guess obviously it's different if you're somebody who didn't play it originally, because now all of a sudden you have the complete set. You have everything there.
You don't even know what's old and
you don't know what's going
on.
on. Yeah. But if you've played the original game, you finished it, you're done, and the DLC came out or the expansion came out and you're like, yeah, whatever. Yeah. And then all of a sudden Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim Enhanced Edition with all the expansions comes out. Is that a draw card? Because then all of a sudden you've got to play again from the start, and then to get everything else. Do you think that's more of a selling point?
Yes, because if I'm willing to buy the game to play it anyway, you know what I mean. Like, if X game came out complete edition and it had all the DLC included, I mean, if I'm buying the game, I must be willing to play it in some capacity, right? And then it's each to their own. There is, I think, an untold concern or, I guess, fear with that is like if a game's really good and the DLC is really, really, really bad, and then it's like a complete edition, you play it all at once. Could it sour your feelings of the base game if you hadn't played it before? Like if you just experience this game with all the DLC as your first playthrough, and the DLC kind of feeds into the story, and you wouldn't know without actually Googling it, what was DLC and what was base game. And then
that would
you're
change.
Like, oh, it could change it. So there is the risk with that, but I think most of the time it's all.
Well, and then you got the other side. So you got a game like Mass Effect 3. It had 3 endings, and then they released like a kind of an add-on or DLC that had all these other different endings. So now when you go and play the Legendary Edition of Mass Effect and you play Mass Effect 3 through that way, all of a sudden it's just that's normal.
Mm.
So you're almost rewarded for your first time round to be later on.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Okay, so then so let's go even further than that. So is it almost better when you know that there is a game coming out that's going to have DLC or going to have an expansion? It's going to have these. Is it better to wait for the complete edition? Or is it better to play the game and then play the DLCs and expansions when they come out? Because I'm at the stage now where when I look at games that come out brand new, if I know it's a one and done, okay, easy. I'll get it. I'll give it a go. Done. Like for example, your Final Fantasy VII and your Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and all this. I know there's going to be nothing much extra. Like the Yuffie DLC, okay, but that's not really adding really. You can get that separately. Whatever. You're not going to get a complete edition with that. But for things like, your BioShock and those sorts of games that do have all these expansions and DLCs, and then all of a sudden they have a complete edition that comes out a couple of years later, is it better to wait for that and wait for that full product?
I mean, if you're playing games like we do, no. Like, I wouldn't be excited for a game and be like, I'm going to wait because I'll know there'll be DLC. I'm one of those weirdos where it's like, people hate day one DLC, but I'm like, if you're going to have DLC, I'd rather it be there day one. And if I want to do it, I'll just play it and buy it there and then. And I'm like, I'm playing through this, so this is the time to get me. I'm not coming back 6 months later. So I know that's controversial because the whole, but it's literally on the disc and they just charged us for it. If they're going to do DLC anyway, I'd rather just play it day one. Obviously, you'd want it to be part of the main game and free and all that. I'm not saying that, but I prefer it to be there day one. I'm not waiting though. Like, I don't think I'd ever wait for a game I like or would like or think I want to play. I wouldn't go, no, I'll wait and
see, like,
come back.
I'm in two minds. So, for example, like, let's look at Assassin's Creed as an example. So, Origins, Odyssey, Valhalla, they all had expansions and they all had like extra DLC that you can get as part of the main game, right? All three of them did. Assassin's Creed, what was the recent one? I've forgotten the name of it already. Mirage. Nothing. Right? Nothing. So Assassin's Creed Shadows is coming out. So I'm already thinking about getting it day one, purely because I'm interested in it. I want to give it a go. But then there's that voice in the back of my head that says, yeah, but if there's a DLC or expansion or something like that, wouldn't it be better to just get like the complete edition when it comes out in a year's time and you can get it for $20 cheaper?
I mean, if you got the patience to do it, if anything, the game's going to be in much better shape in a year's time, regardless of DLC, probably because the game will be broken at launch, potentially. So there is that. If you don't mind that, like, that's what I'm saying. A lot of the times people say game, it's an expensive hobby, but you can do it on the cheap, right? Whether that's subscription, whether that's like not playing everything that comes out day one, like I tend to do and spend a lot of money. If you got the patience and you don't mind, wait. You're getting the best versions of the games, running the best with all the content. But again, it goes back to like, if that's the way you want to do it. Like for me, I probably won't play the DLC for Origins, for Shadows. I'll just play the main game.
Yeah.
And that's probably because I'll be happy with the content that's there. And like Assassin's Creed in particular, the expansion content seems to be kind of like the mythical side of that universe, whether that's Egypt or whatever. I mean, once I'm done, right?
So I was like that with Ghost of Tsushima. Like, I finished Ghost of Tsushima, I got the platinum on it, and then they released Ghost of Tsushima Legends, and I was like, so there's a new game plus as well.
Oh, you mean the Iki expansion?
Yeah, and I played the Iki, like the island, but then they had Legends and they had New Game Plus, and I was like, do I really want to play through again? And I played through the expansion area because I'm like, all right, it's still like close enough where like I know what I'm doing, so I don't have to like relearn everything. But I didn't want to have to play through the game from the start, and I didn't want to have to worry about the multiplayer stuff and to try and get in a room with other people and figure that out. I was like, no. Ghost of Tsushima was my single player experience. I went through all of that. I was more than happy with that. And now you're giving me an extra little bit to go to. I'll do that. But
that's also the risk of it too, where it's like, okay, so this is like set in the world of Ghost of Tsushima, but it's like midway through, so it doesn't affect the ending. So why am I even really?
Yeah.
What does this add? And then again, it comes to the timing piece, right? Like you said, would I buy a game complete edition if I hadn't played it? And yes, but I will also buy a game if it's like, hey, this PS4 version, we're doing a PS5 upgrade, and it comes with the DLC that's launching at the same time. Well, then, I'll be like, I'm interested to see how this game runs on new console, and I'll play the expansion for a game I like. That makes sense. But it all comes down to taste, because I think, people like say, this game's, it's a cop-out, Sony's selling The Last of Us again. It's for whoever wants it. If you don't want it, don't buy it, and they won't make it, because no one's buying it. Like, it's not... It's as simple as people want it, they make it.
And you know what? The simplest explanation for that one there is Mario Kart 8. Because Mario Kart 8 big seller on the Wii U for all 20 million units, and I own 2 of them, whatever. And then it released on the Switch as Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Basically the same thing, a little bit more refined for the console. But they've had the expansion tracks. They had the expansions you could buy, whether it's tracks or characters. Then they had the booster pass, and they've had all this extra stuff on top of it, which makes it a much superior game. But
like
not
Smash Brothers, right?
Exactly. But not only that, it sold over 60 million units. It sold more,
console people like.
It sold more than every single other Mario Kart.
It's sold nearly twice the amount that there's Xbox Series consoles in the world.
Yeah. Well, the Switch. Yeah. So okay. Well, actually, speaking of Switch, like by the way, the PlayStation 2 is at 150 mil. Yeah.
155-ish. Yeah.
Switch is catching up.
Oh yeah, 100%. Wild.
Switch is in the 130s to 140s.
No, I think they're like 140 or 145. Yeah. They're only like 10 million behind.
They're so close. They're so close. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
But like, I can see that there is definitely a selling point to buying a game when it first comes out, and then there's like another version that has these DLCs and expansions. And I liked DLCs and expansions for what they offer, as long as I don't feel like I have to continue what I've been doing, especially if it's been so delayed. If it was 3-6 months ago, even, like, that's way too long. I forget how to play. You're going to have to start me from scratch. Like, make it a new experience, like your Spider-Man Miles Morales. Like that works better for me, and I'm pretty sure that works better for you as well. Or that's what Burial at Sea did for BioShock Infinite. Like,
it does, like, so much. And to wrap this up, like, again, not to go to the business, Josh, but like, even financially, from a business perspective, it makes sense, right? We can churn out games quicker because it's not like I'm waiting between Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2, right? And that development time. It's like, well, we've got Spider-Man 1. We can turn a near full-size game out in 2 years' time because we've got the world, we've got the engine, we've got the character models.
We've got the assets, yeah, done.
We've got the assets. Let's just tell an exciting story within that world, keep players satiated, and then the wait between Miles and Spider-Man 2 doesn't feel as long. It's a win-win from everyone. They make more monies, they make more monies. They make more money, they sell more copies. The wait between games is shorter. Why? I don't understand why that isn't happening with every Sony game or Xbox game or whatever. Maybe not Xbox games because they've got so many developers making games they don't need to do that. But Sony, man, why are we waiting? Now we're going to wait, from Ragnarok to the next God of War. Like, why not have...
Because they moved to games as a service and then they realized they didn't want to.
That's why they should come knocking on my door. I can probably give them more salient advice than anyone out there working at SIE today.
As an absolute expert, huh?
Oh, I wouldn't be making Concord, so...
Yeah, I'd be shelving that as quickly as possible. Like, sorry, It didn't work. Like, before...
Yeah.
Oh, man, it looks...
2,000 peak play. Anyway, it's a whole different...
I'm sure we'll touch on Concord in the next couple of weeks because nobody else will play it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think we are going to wrap it up. It has been a fairly lengthy show. So, Josh, thank you very much for chatting about Destiny. I know you love talking about Bungie and Destiny and games you don't play.
Yeah. Kind of proves I can talk about anything, right?
Yeah, within reason, of course, yes. And the DLC expansion topic, I think there's a little bit there to really chat about whether or not it's kind of viable from a player perspective and kind of what works best. So for those of you who are watching, let us know, like, is there a particular DLC that's come out for a game that's really drawn you back into it? If there's an expansion that you feel has really kind of like changed the way a game has appealed to you, or if you think that, they haven't really quite figured it out yet and it's probably better to do cosmetics in a store like Eververse for Destiny. I don't know. Let us know in the comments below, or if you're listening online, please tweet us or X us. I don't know. Are they still called X's? I know they're still called tweets.
I don't know. I just want to call out a few before someone writes in the comments. How did you not mention the old hunters for Bloodborne? There you go. Minerva's Den, BioShock 2. There is some really...
I didn't play Bloodborne, that's why.
Powerful. Even Blood Dragon, right? For Far Cry 3.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, that's good. That's in the same boat.
From expansions perspective, like the Diablo expansions, even Cuphead and its expansion was really good. Obviously, all the Dark Souls. There's plenty out there. Like there's plenty that we didn't touch on. It's not because they're not important, but I mean,
just
there's
want to get the
examples of it
message
doing
across.
right.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure because the Bloodborne people are very touchy at the moment.
Yeah,
so
they can be touchy all they want, but at the moment they're still not getting it on PS5 or
you know
PC.
what's not being touchy? Sony with Bloodborne.
They're not touching it with a 10-foot pole for some reason. I don't know. They don't know what's going on. I don't know.
I've got a feeling it's coming though. I've got a
Really?
feeling it's coming with the Pro. I just got this
You
weird.
reckon Bloodborne is coming to PS5 when the PS5 Pro is announced?
Yep, I've just got this feeling. I mean, the game's there. Like, let's just. My God, there is third-party people who have upscaled the game to 60 frames. It's not that difficult. Like, let's just do it and
Get it
sell
over with.
God,
Make some money.
again, it's Sony. If you need someone to make all your decisions for you, I come cheap. Just
Yeah, you're not on a
$500,000 a year.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're not on a pay packet of like $4 to $5 million a year where you're buying
Yeah.
Lamborghinis and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, that has been episode 10 of Busy Playing Something. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you do like and subscribe to the video and let us know what your DLCs or expansions that you've really enjoyed are. We've already touched on a few. And if you want to get more involved in Destiny, please tweet us on X/Twitter at HolyDePrawn and at Joshua LaRosa. We are there. We are watching. And thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And Josh, do you want to say anything before we head off?
What do I want to say? What am I feeling?
Besides bringing Bloodborne to PS5 and PC,
No,
you're already manifesting. You're already getting there.
Yeah. PlayStation Showcase. I think it needs to happen.
You know it's happening, right? It's happening this month.
Let's see.
Later this month. It's happening. Done. August. It's happening. All right. We'll see you guys later.
Ciao.